Your next project is called the Eagle Grid Project. We've been practicing up until this point to make sure that proportions are drawn correctly and that things are where they need to sit inside of a picture that we've already been given. Here you can see a finished example of the drawing, the inking, and the coloring. This project does take a bit of time, so just take deep breaths as we're working on this and realize that it's not something that's done fast, but we will work on it through class. And we are first just focusing on the drawing. So any of the coloring stuff, any of the inking, let that just fade away for right now. We are focusing on making sure we can draw the eagle grid. Each of you will start out with a picture of an eagle, just like this. You can see that there are going to be some empty squares, but overall the eagle picture is fitting inside of this one. You should already have created a 1 by 1 inch grid using a ruler and using good measuring techniques to make sure everything's lined up very nice. A through I written over here and 1 through 12 written along the top, just like we see inside of the picture here. Today, I want to talk to you about how to make sure we are doing the other parts of our grade. Remember, we were already graded and have already done that lightly draw a 1 by 1 inch grid. And then at the end, we will be graded on making sure that grid completely disappears. So hopefully you've done step 1 right so that this can also happen. Today, I want to talk about breaking down the squares for proper placement of lines and also replicating and enlarging lines and shapes in each square. To do that, we're going to take a look at this picture. You can see I've already worked with this picture a little bit as I wanted to get another picture a little farther along so we could look at multiple steps throughout this picture. So on this picture, you can see we might want to just pick a place to start. I always like to start with the word eagles because if I can get that placed in, then I feel pretty confident being able to move into the eagle. I know there's a lot of information, but remember, we're taking this one square at a time. To help myself out, I like to use this paper and kind of keep it blocked from the other areas, so I'm only focusing on the areas that I'm trying to draw right now, which happens to be row 11. So right here down in row 11I, we're going to start here. Remember, we can cut squares in half, and on the paper handed to you, you can draw as much as you need to get ideas of where you're supposed to be at. So now this is plus sign, add it in. And remember, that's breaking down the square. Oftentimes on the actual photograph or the actual picture I'm working at, I don't like to make lines all the way across because then that's just a lot of erasing I have to do. And if I don't have to erase, I don't want to. So you'll see me often do these little dashes that indicate where halfway is. You can see right here on the eagle for the word that is right along this line between 11 and 12. And we can see that curve starts just at the halfway point. So right here, I'm going to make sure I have this line. And then this is going to come down and curve and go up past my halfway point, and then just a little bit before that halfway point. If I were to make that a circle, that's the same size. So I need to increase the size of this circle just a bit to make room. So now I can come here, curve this line. You can see moving it up towards the bottom of that circle. That's getting my little E at the bottom put in. And notice that was drawn very lightly so I can erase it later. I also have more going on inside of here. I've got about that same distance between the middle line to the top. I know that the inside of that E goes about halfway between half. That's about right. So also at that diagonal angle, I draw to there. Then I can draw straight up. And then when I'm done with those measurement marks, I can erase those. And I can kind of evaluate if I think that looks all right. You could work your way across or you could work your way up. I tend to work in a lot of different directions. It depends on where I'm at. So you'll see again, splitting in half. And you'll notice I don't actually measure. I kind of just use my eyes to figure out where half will be. If you're making these lines, don't curve your fingers. Make sure to just pull straight down. Look at how skinny that space is. Halfway, a little bit below that. It's a pretty smooth square. And this is just going to go right up to the edge of there. See how those lines should pretty much disappear? Everything's erased. That should just go away. So remember, draw lightly. I am not adding any pressure to my pencil. I'm not bending the paper as I do this. Again, notice this follows that same diagonal that does. It's not flat. It's the same diagonal. And we're just really close to the halfway point. I also can see inside of here that about the halfway point, we go above and below that line. That's 2 squares. And if things aren't where they need to be, if later on they need to change, because as I look at this, I realize I've already made a mistake. I make them all the time. That's diagonal, that is flat. So really take a look and notice, okay, that's going to be diagonal, the same diagonal as that. The same thing up top. Done some math for you, and I found out that you can take about 3 minutes per square and get this done in the time that we have allotted. That may seem like a lot on some squares, and other squares that's going to seem like way too little. If you can get it done, a square done faster, that's fine. But if you need to spend more time on a square, that's all right, because some of them will take more time. You can see on this one, I've been moving my way across. I've gotten the E and the A, part of the G, which I need to fix. Notice right there. I'm doing some of these lines. Remember, these lines are thicker. There are areas that have an outside and an inside. These are not single drawn lines like this. They have an outside and an inside. They have a space that we will be filling in, okay? So as we continue to look at this, you can see I've done a few more squares. I've looked at some things. A couple other ideas I want you to do is look for where things connect. Really make sure. You can see right here between 9 and 10 that this part of the eagle's beak is not actually touching that corner. So as I'm looking, that should not actually touch the corner. But we'll also look for those negative shapes. We can see right there, we're creating a little bit of a triangle with that white space. It's got a bit of a curve up top. And I do have to draw a little bit larger because we are increasing on size. We're trying to keep the proportions. So just notice this moves along and connects. And this other line follows. It doesn't change direction. This line just follows with it. So we can see that. It's a pretty good representation. And then we've got part of this beak right here for the nostril. I can see that it touches along this edge, so I know I don't want to move into row 10. I'm just right here. Notice how I'm looking at what's happening. I'm saying to myself in my head what row, what number I'm on. Okay, what row, what number am I on? You have to be thoughtful about those things, or else you're just going to try to make it up yourself. And I promise, if you try to make it up yourself, you're going to mess up somewhere. So in order to get the best that we can, I want to use what we have available to us. This is one long kind of connected line. Don't get quite that close. It does come to a point. And here pops up and moves around. Okay. Do you see how we're starting to build that? That was one square, and that did not take a full 3 minutes. You can see how we're starting to sketch this and look at what's happening. Really pay attention to those things. I can tell right here that was way too low. That's one of the reasons I stopped that one. So I wanted to make sure the spacing here was correct. Because you can see where I had drawn that, I realized that was going to be too low. I need to go back and reevaluate where center is. I need to rework that square. This happens to me all the time. It happens in these types of projects where we're moving back and forth. The biggest thing you can realize is that sometimes we get a little stressed. We just need to take a half a second to breathe and then look at it. If one area is annoying us, move to another section for a bit. You can work through this. I wouldn't pick some random square to work on, but I would keep everything kind of connected and building out from where you're at. Look at these squares. Look at what's happening. Anytime you're confused, the answer's right here. And all you need to do is split up that square, make the plus sign, show little circles, and then realize those little circles should increase in size just a bit to show us where things are going. Okay? So be thoughtful, take your time. You've got oodles of time to work on this. So if you only get so far in one day, realize that you have even more time to work on it later. We are working through this. We'll talk about the other steps later, but right now we're just using those breaking down techniques to figure out placements and then recreate those in our shapes. And then as we continue to build, we'll draw, we'll get these eagles finished drawn, then we'll move on to the next steps, which the inking should feel very familiar to you, and then we'll talk about coloring.